Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Alchemist and The Oracle, a space where we engage in spiritualized conversations that deepen understanding, inspire transformation, and spark meaningful dialogue about life's most profound truths. I'm joined with my co-host, Warriors Ardashir RN, the Alchemist, and I am Nicole Nick Love, the Oracle. So welcome to our channel. And today's conversation is going to be a discussion around the 4 agreements. And we're actually going to kind of create like a little series and break down each agreement. So be sure to stay tuned for this, the ones coming up in the future. So today's agreement that we're going to be focusing on is be impeccable with your word.
Indeed.
I want to shout out the book. Well, I'll let you shout out the book. You actually have the book. Right?
Yes.
Can you hold the book up so they can see what it looks like? The 4 Agreements by Mr. Ruiz. It's a really good book. So how were you introduced to this book? Was it through spiritual warrior training?
No, I had known about the book. I had known about the book a while back and had it prior to even moving back to my hometown, and had been going through this book early 17 with a good friend of mine, a good home girl of mine, for whom is a dear friend of mine today. We played a lot of sports together. And so we were going through it. But what I know about this book is you have to go through it more than once in order for it to hit you. Depending on where you are and what stage you are. In your career. There's also a 5th agreement. I also have that book as well. And haven't chimed into it, but understanding that it is a important part of the series too, which means be skeptical, but listen, is the 5th agreement. And I can show that book later when that time comes. But being impeccable with your word, and the reason why we talked about which ones, suit us best. Be impeccable with your word.
What do you mean? Okay, so full transparency. I let her pick the 2. And I just took the last. I was like, okay, whatever. And so I was left with be impeccable with your word, which I'm cool with. I think it's one of my favorite ones.
Hold on, sweetie. No, you doing
don't make assumptions. But we're not talking about that today.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk? I mean, okay, so be impeccable with your word. And which ones are you doing? Do you want to talk about those?
Be impeccable with your word.
That's
and
what
don't
I'm
think
doing.
Personally.
Wait, do we have the wrong agreements? I have be impeccable with your word.
We got the wrong agreement.
That's literally what I wrote down. Hold the phone, please.
I took the first 2.
I looked back at your text message and it was not what you listed.
Oh, wow. Those are the ones I've concentrated on.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it don't matter. It don't matter which one. Oh, Lord, I love us. Which one?
Okay, I need to know now. We're leaving all of this in, okay? Which ones do you want? What's the other one? Well, let me ask you this. Which ones did you think that I had?
I thought you had don't make assumptions and always do your best.
I didn't have do your best. You had that one.
Oh, something must have shifted my consciousness.
Did not have that one. I had be impeccable with your word and don't make assumptions.
So it was just the opposite. So I don't know. There was a shift in consciousness. It is okay. I'm cool. We can do it. It's all good to me. I still got examples. I have stories.
Oh my God.
So we're doing impeccable with your word.
This is going to be interesting because we have probably different takes on it. But okay, so we're gonna get into be impeccable with your word today.
Yes.
So how Ruiz presented it, I want to start there. And he talks about how words are described as the most powerful tools that we possess, and how they're capable of creation or destruction. And I like how he kind of makes that distinction. And what he also speaks about in the book is being impeccable means speaking truthfully, kindly, and with integrity, and really focusing on aligning your words with your highest self. And I think that's really, really important. And how I was reintroduced to the book was, and we both was through our spiritual warrior training.
Yes.
And so part of our practice, and I have my book, I pulled my book out from
wonderful
our sessions to kind of see how I set with the agreements. And so part of the process is we had to pick one of the 4 agreements every day, every morning, and ask ourselves, okay, which agreement am I going to be focusing on? So it was kind of cool to like look back and see what I wrote. So I'll kind of share a little bit of that later on if we have the time. But let me ask you this, since you've done the deep dive into it. Oh my gosh. This is going to be so interesting.
I love it.
What does being impeccable with your word mean to you?
Well, I like to take in the book, because you see
she's got really notes, y'all. She's doing a master class. Stay tuned. No, I'm serious. I could so see you doing that.
Oh, yeah.
On the power and the alchemization of your in and of your life as it relates to the ego, and using the 4 agreements to alchemize your life in a way that feels aligned, purposeful, and highly spiritualized. Did you like that?
I like that. That was good. That's good, because our conversation, I mean, the example of what we spoke about before we got the recording here.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I look at when I and what I had outlined here is the importance of it. So in the book on page 26, they talk about your word is the power you have to create. So it's the gift that directly comes from source, God, creator, universe, however you want to address the supreme being. And it is through the word that you manifest everything. So it's very important that everything that we do is of the word that we speak, that comes out of our mouth. You know, the word is just not a sound, as he puts in the bottom side. It's a written, and then I wrote Joyce Meyer because of some work that I do with her. And the word is a force. And then I do have an example. Check this out. So, an experience that I had a couple of months ago in town, where a relative lived, and something went down that I know that my spirit did not want me to experience. But I ended up experiencing it anyway, because I couldn't go out the way that I wanted to go out when there was a lot of commotion. And so I saw something that shouldn't have disturbed me at this stage in my life, but it disturbed me anyway, because it was a violent act. So with that being said, one of the guys who knew them, who was sitting down there, and after that happened, he said, words are powerful. So something was going on, and a conversation that was going on down there didn't turn out too well. And I saw something, and so the guy said, words are powerful. I said, yes, but sometimes we have to let the stuff go over our head. I said, we have to be better and do better. And then the whole thing comes into the next one that we're talking about, is not taking it personally. And obviously that's what happened. Don't know what discussion is, walked in on it by accident. And when that guy was talking about words are powerful, they are. So something was said that took this other person to a different state, where they went in, got something, and they hit somebody with an object. So when he mentioned that, the power of words are so that. And it can actually, one of the other things on page 27 talking about is this so powerful that one word can change life or destroy life. And depending on knowing who you are and how that is, that can happen. And when we look at children, when we look at us as adults and things of that, and I shared an example with you was with a young child that I'm very close with on how that impresses upon you. What your parents say to you, or someone calls you stupid, and there's an example in the book about that. And I think that's in the next agreement is how they transition, into one another. The importance of what we say, how we say it, what we say to ourselves, and what we receive is the reason why it is. But in that, you have to know in and of who you are and how, a land. There's another perfect example of Hitler in the book, and how the word and how he was able to, spill this hatred among a come to just cause a whole destruction of a people by his word. So yeah, it's a huge force to neighbor. It is a power we have to express and communicate to think and thereby create events in our life. So we don't realize what we say creates that in how we manifest what we manifest as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the part of the book that spoke to my soul is like he had an emphasis on how words are like spells. Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
and how that shapes our reality. And so me being the woo-woo person that I am, I'm like, ooh, I like that idea. So one example is like gossip. Like when you think of gossip, that's not really being impeccable with your word. So when you put it through the lens of words are spells, like you can then look at gossip as black magic. That
Yes.
that spreads that negativity that you're kind of like alluding to. So
here it is right here. Yeah,
I
page 29.
I love because I'm just woo woo as hell, and I loved how he made that connection, and how being impeccable with your word is really that reminder that words are spells, and you're casting those things onto people, and
Yes.
it speaks about kind of like the situation you were talking about, the example you were giving with the two that were having an altercation. It's like the power of that shows like there was a spell that was cast that the other person felt, and they responded to that in some capacity.
They did. I came
and you responded to that as well. So it just shows the ripple effect of the power of words, that you can say something that's directed to someone else, but it's so powerful. Our words are so powerful that it can impact the other people around that you're not even directing what you're saying to. And you picked up on that.
Oh, yes. I mean, because I came in like after and talking with the gentleman there, and that's the first thing that he said. He said, words are powerful. And I'm like, they are. But then in and of its sense, the quote that I like by our mentor is and something happened where we have some agreements with ourselves that have been embedded. And so in order to react in a certain way, one of our things is if it ain't true about you, then don't let it live on you. So I like that. I'm like, if it's not true about me, why should I care? And if I've said it again, that just means that it comes up, and it's one of those things that we have to go deep down inside and address. And so I remember running into someone here who used to say that that if somebody says something, they went from 0 to 60. And so they said they don't go from 0 to 60 anymore, is because you have to do that work within. You have to know what agreements that you have made within yourself that need to be released from you, so you don't have what they call hell, what they call the hell that we have inside of us. And how people look at that word, which is the chaos within. It's the chaos that's going on, the chaos on the outside. And so it did says that, for example, we cast spells with our opinions. And for example, one of the ones is if you're a child, someone calls you ugly, and you receive that and believe that, and once that becomes within you, that's the stuff that come on you, is the spell that you become under, to believe that you're ugly and that you are not, that human being, or someone calling you fat, and that stays with you until adulthood, as an agreement that you accept it, within yourself, to really believe that you really believe that you're fat, and most people are not, and some people are thicker than other people, and most of the time we know our own situation, but and what we can do about is how, and what we say to ourselves, and loving ourselves. We have to come there.
It's all about energy, right? Because when you casting spells, it's about, everything is energy. So when you think of the impact of using your words and understanding that there's an energetic frequency or vibration to the words that you're saying. And so if you call someone like, oh, you're fat or you're stupid, comparatively to you're beautiful and you're smart, it shapes the reality completely different for the people that hear those words consistently.
Yes.
So I think, and I recognize why this book was part of our spiritual warrior training, and why we were really pushed to look at an agreement and pick an agreement. And we had to, at the start of the day, we picked the agreement, and then at the end of the day, we would sit down and do a reflection about how we caught ourselves and how we were aware of whatever agreement it was that we took on.
Chose, yes.
Yeah, and so the be impeccable with your word one for me was something that, because I was kind of going back through my book here, that was one that I kind of went back to a lot.
Yes.
And I was kind of surprised to go back and see that. I was like, oh, I was really working with that agreement a lot in SWIT too. But I don't want to say I put more weight or value on any of them, but I just see how the power of words, the power of how it can really cast those spells that he was talking about in the book. It's like that spell casting and such. So
yes,
it's like sending an energetic blueprint out is kind of how I look at it. And I appreciate that agreement so much, because it allows me to take responsibility for the words that I speak, not just to other people, but more so with myself. And that was when I kind of looked back through my notes, I realized that I really started to work with it from the inner reflection of within myself. How am I being impeccable with the word to myself? Because the other agreements really kind of help to frame me to especially like the assumptions one. Don't make assumptions and don't take things personally.
Yes.
It pushed me back into myself and providing me an opportunity to really reflect on, how am I being impeccable with my word, with myself?
Well, that's where it begins first and foremost, is knowing who you are, and saying the things. It's like in the mirror, this whole thing about the mirror, the whole thing about affirmations, the whole thing, and that whole is where you have to begin.
Yeah.
And so when you get to don't take anything personally, it'll get into we're getting a little more depth of that.
Will we? I think that's the one no one did any work on. We'll figure
Oh,
it
yes,
out.
I did.
We've done work on it. Is that the one you tried?
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes, because that one was really something
I
that
think okay, that's gonna be the next one coming after this.
yeah.
Watch out for that.
So being impeccable, see, it says being impeccable is not going against yourself. So when you look at self-talk, and I have to realize that self-talk because I've been so hard on myself. And I think it came from childhood, and most things do. Even the story and the poet, I mean, I've had people say you need to write your poetry about your hair and all that I went through around it, from a young girl, and having this thing. It ain't that I didn't have hair, just that it didn't look like this person or that person. And what you tell yourself throughout that, or how your parents or that say something about how you're supposed to present, how you're supposed to look. And then as a child, you go tell yourself you have to be like this, you have to do like this. And it goes against your naturalness, your natural essence. So what you say to yourself is most important than what anyone else can say to you, because what they can come say to you, if you know the truth about who you are and who you are, then a word cannot hurt you. And he talks about this in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing is to be impeccable with your word to yourself, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But I do get, and so here's something that here I have another example. And depending on who it is what it is. I have no names. But a situation
She has names.
happened. I need to write this book. I got stories. So
Okay. Don't cast that spell because I hear you and I'm gonna hold you accountable to it. Go ahead. I'm gonna write that
and
down right now.
this is how words get to somebody. So there was a certain situation where a young man was wearing a certain and this has happened on more than one occasion. So let me put that out there. And I have these conversations with God. I'm so glad that I am and have done and continue to do the work, because it's an ongoing process till you leave the human body.
Mm.
About these pants, and there's certain styles that are in, certain styles that are coming back. And just like the suits and the patterns, they're from the 70s, they've just uplifted them a little bit, because I can take pictures where you see my father in this suit, this, that, and the other. So long story short is that another gentleman said to another gentleman about his pants, and that they was tight and all that, and honey, they weren't. They were the style, they were the jeans, they were dope, okay? And so this ended up getting to this person. And how I know that is because when I seen them the next day, the pants were baggy, they were different. And it's just an awareness that I have that this person went on and wanted to take all kind and say all kind of things. And the dude couldn't let it go. And there was nothing wrong with it. And so eventually he mentions a certain town that you're in, and had to go somewhere that he didn't need to go, about being gay. And I'm like, why would you go there? So when I get to another place, I see another guy in similar jeans, and I have this conversation with him. So you can tell that the words and what this guy was saying affected the other individual.
Mm.
So they have power, but yet, what do you see about you? What do you know about you that's true? Because if you don't know about fashion and you're going to stay back in umpteen years, now, yeah, there's some clothes from back in the day I can make look new. But the thing of it is if you're not into fashion, you need to shut up,
But what
because
does
there was
fashion
nothing
even
wrong.
mean? Wear what you want to wear, people, okay?
Agreed. So my thing is that this is a perfect example of how something was projected, and people will have something to say about spells, and it ain't what you think it is, but you are spewing
Or maybe
this
it is.
hell, yeah, or like he says, this black man, this heinousness onto someone else based upon what you believe and what you don't understand. And I was very open to say that that's not the case. Beautiful, beautiful pants. We are wearing the slit jeans, and you have a more slender person, and you have this. And so I was just looking at my dude Shannon Sharp. Now Shannon Sharp is built to the hilt, okay? And he had on his outfit where he's speaking with Cat Williams, and I'm like, would anybody tell him that? Because this conversation come up, about the fashion, and
Shout
his
out
was
to Cat
fitting.
Williams. Now, Cat Williams is a fashion icon in my opinion, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So in speaking in the words, they have hit people in a certain way. So, that is so important. What you say to somebody, how they receive it. So you want to be impeccable with your words. When you say something, mean it. And that don't mean that people need to take what you say to the truth, but it does happen. And I see it all the time, is the reason why I mentioned some of these examples, because I had to say something in the interim all the time, because I can't see and just let things go by the wayside without speaking and telling the truth about certain things and to have them. But this one person just wouldn't let it go, and it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate circumstance to witness for like over 30 minutes.
No, I think I I want to lean into like giving examples of the power of the word and how you can reframe it as well. So I appreciate that example and that reminder of how we can be influenced by what other people say to us, and it starts with us being grounded in a certain knowing of how we see ourselves to be,
Exactly.
how we
Page
defined ourselves
2031.
to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also really important. But with that, I know that it can be really hard to quiet the noise, as I like to say it. Especially because some people are just so loud and just so persistent, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
people, they have taken on that role where it's like their opinion, for them, they feel like it needs to be heard and you need to get on board and what have you. But that's a them thing, not a you thing, right? So
Yeah.
I want to kind of, when I was listening to you talk, I was thinking of this concept of like toxic positivity. It was
Mm-hmm.
reminding me of this conversation that I was overhearing someone else have yesterday on my business call.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ladies was she's always like, she tries to stay positive, and she was saying this needs to be a space of positivity, and if you can't find the capacity to stay in that space of positivity, then maybe this is not the space for you. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just thinking like, that's an interesting approach, because the reality that people don't have challenges and struggles, and you saying your challenges and struggles, check it at the door, I don't want to hear it. It
Mm-hmm.
just was pushing people into coming into that space, that container that she was holding,
Mm-hmm.
and not really being impeccable with their word, because
Yes.
they're not showing up truthfully. And so this, it reminded me of like this toxic positivity, like stay positive, stay positive. And the issue with it, here's the issue with it, is it invalidates people's emotions, their real emotions, their real feelings. It's not that they're not trying to be positive, or
Mm-hmm.
they recognize I'm like a little bit kind of off here, and I'm like, the goal is to get to feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to allow the space for people to get there. So
Yes.
if this is something that you lean into, like I want to stay positive, 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 that's great. And I think it's important to want people to be good and feel good about their life, but also it's
Yes.
important to allow them the space to get there, because sometimes we move away from it for whatever, life happens. So I wrote, so an example here would be like, if you think of someone that's struggling with like mental health, and they're like, and you tell them, just think happy thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
How is that helpful? It dismisses their experience, and it can cause them feeling like really isolated. And so going back to the example that I gave, she was like chewing out one person very specifically, and I was just like, you as a business owner, I know you've had challenges. How can you
Mm-hmm.
not find the capacity to have the empathy and the understanding, and maybe providing her with tools or resources to get her to the level of you saying, let's be positive. We want this space to be positive and conducive for people to reach their business goals. But in order to reach the business goals, I think is really important to understand what are the blocks that people are
Yes, the
going through.
challenges.
Yeah. And I just don't feel like it was really helpful for that person in that moment, because you could just see her just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard to see, to the point where after the call, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, are you okay with that experience? Because I put myself in that situation, and I would have felt some kind of way that I was being kind of like put on a pedestal to use as an example, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
just the fact, just seeing the words that someone else was saying, even though they were thinking that they were being impeccable with their word, being trying to stay positive here, you could just see her just slowly, like her energy was just so low, and
Yeah, I
she was
mean,
questioning like everything.
yeah, I mean, you should be able in that space, and that person has something going on within them, to have them come there, because people have challenges, and even in business, and if you're in a meeting like that, then you have to be able to express the challenges, um, and to get the help from other people who have
Yeah,
experienced it.
that's literally the purpose of that container, is for people to come in and say, hey, I'm having a challenge here, or I need
Yeah.
support in like, this is my goal, and like these may be some blocks that I've identified. It's just like, I that made me a little sad, and I may be highly in judgment and in such, and making assumptions and all those other things. But I recognize, and I was reminded, because I try to look at situations that like move me in that way, where I'm like, this
Mhm.
is some bull, like what the hell is going on here. I try to like pause and reflect, okay, like, what's the lesson? How can I approach that with myself? And it's just the reminder, like I was reminded of, like, how have I done that with myself in my own business, in my
Yeah.
business practices, and saying like, oh, I'm not being positive, just be positive. And it just kind of reminded me that challenges are okay. And this idea of like, I haven't met my business goal from a financial standpoint, then like just blow the business up. And I was just kind of reminded of, what are the small little wins, the small little successes? Focus on that. So that was what I kind of came back to, and looking at how, just kind of relating it to back to being impeccable with my word,
To
is
yourself. Yeah.
recognizing how I was speaking to myself
Yes.
in the same way that this person was saying, like, you got to stay positive, stay on the positive side with your business. And I wasn't being honest and being in integrity about the challenges that I was experiencing. And from that, I also wasn't seeing the truth, the full truth, that there were some good things that have happened
Mhm.
along the
Mhm.
way. So sometimes it's so important to be impeccable with your word and how you speak to yourself, and really seeing that you're doing, like, I just keep getting like, you're doing so much better than we give ourselves credit for, because we just beat ourselves up.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Is it says, and then people, well, we can probably define that word later. Is sin, and that means is begins with the rejection of yourself. So self-rejection is one of the biggest sins that we commit against ourselves. It's just like it says comparing yourself, as Major has said, Iana, comparing yourself to others is a authentic is violence against your authentic
Act of
self.
violence against yourself. Yep.
So when you're speaking against yourself, your words, then you are really doing yourself a huge dissatisfaction in more ways than one. And so when I look at like with family or anybody else who's real close to me, have tried my best to be clear and down on some of the other things we'll talk about in the next one to come, which means the next one is don't make assumptions, is to have clarity. And you need to have that. And what are you saying to yourself now? We have things in our mind is always going. You know, when we get in the mirror, how do I look? Oh, I look this way, I look that way. Sometimes we say we look a certain way, and we have to be impeccable with our words to ourselves for and foremost in order to spill that out into the world. So we think about, what do we say somebody when we say, you know, somebody's beautiful, or we tell somebody that, how what we put out in the world is how it totally comes back to us, and leads us into that, you know, and in the depth of it, you know, say I love myself. It's like, what do you say to yourself? Because the power of word can be totally misused.
Yeah.
And hell, how we walk, what we say, and that is a perfect example of what's going on within our own selves. Like that other person say, I'm gonna stay old school and I'm this way and you're gonna dress that way. I know some people that dress sharp. So the thing of it is like, what does that mean? And I came up with another thing that's all connected, is knowing who you are. You know that if you know who you are, what says whose you are, then that black magic or that spells or that spool of hell of words that somebody put on you cannot be received in that manner. If you're saying these things and these loving things to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your energy is vibrating higher, and that lower energy just can't attach to you in that way. So for sure.
Yes.
For
Yes,
sure.
indeedy.
So
Um,
I wanna give an example, because I wrote down some examples of what people, like, I've heard people say, I've heard myself say, and how to like reframe it so you can be more impeccable with your word.
yes.
Um, so one thing I have written down is I am bad at this,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm,
And that's
mm.
such a self-defeating statement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if you say that all the time, you become bad at it, because that's what you are casting out. That's what you're telling your mind to provide continuous examples and experiences that I'm bad at this.
That
So
right there.
the reframing, the replacing it with empowering, like a more empowering phrase is I'm learning and growing. So then it allows you to be much more open to the experiences and learn, and how can I grow through it, versus I'm really bad at this. It's like, no, I'm learning and growing. It kind of reminds me of how you think of like a child that's starting to walk. We don't
Mm-hmm,
ever we're not like yelling at the child like, "Oh, you're just so stupid. You can't figure this out, you little baby." Most people aren't saying that to a little baby. They're like, "Oh,
mm-hmm.
no, get back up. You're doing so good." Or they celebrate them walking, and like, so it's like, treat yourself and speak to yourself in the way that you would a child, especially if you're doing something new, and understanding that you're not going to be good at it because you have never done it. And the idea that you're good at something, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
But it's just be allowing yourself to be open to the experience versus like, I'm bad at this, really kind of closes you off from receiving goodness in your life. So that's like one
Yeah.
example. Have you told yourself I'm bad at this before? You ever caught yourself like, I'm bad at this? Especially like
I
new
don't.
things.
No, I'm like open to new things. I think more of mine has been around my, wow, this is humbling. More around my body, and I've been building, cut, and looking, and how I was supposed to, look in the world. So no, I've never said I was bad at anything, but I know I've had the resistance to question my giftednesses. Um, but there's some things that I say that I'm really bad ass at, like driving. As long as I'm paying attention, I'm one of the best drivers on the road. I love it. I'm a road dog.
Oh
So,
God.
there's certain things, and then there's other things like like, coming publicly like this because the generation didn't come like this. A question, the visibility of what, I have to say, when I'm out in the streets is so different. This conversation is comfortable to a degree for me. But there's most things that I do have that you have to catch, that we have these repeated things about what we're not good at, how we look, um, what we're not good at, and do that. And I have to remind myself of that, because when I'm telling other people that, I am very, very mostly impeccable with my word, because I know what's possible. So people say you can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can. It might not be something you desire to do, and that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
It's a whole different story. Like getting on a roof. I got up on my roof, and it's like, well, it's not that I can't do the roofing. I am, you know, just in amazement of the guys who just walk up on the roof like there's nothing,
I know,
and put
right?
roofs up. And I had got on my roof before I left for so long, so I could see. And I'm on a hill anyway. It's just beautiful. But
Yeah.
to walk around there, they let me go up there, and I got up there, and then I obviously got back down. I like being up high, but them walking around there, that's not something that I would desire to do. And so could I be good at it? Yeah, but that's not something that I would see it, but I wouldn't tell myself that I couldn't do it. And
You
then we
don't
tell
want to do
ourselves
it.
that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when we are going against ourselves with our word.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to catch myself. I have to catch myself, because you can walk around in your house and stuff will be coming up in your mind about, what you can and cannot do. And it comes back to some agreements that have been within, that come from childhood. It still goes back to the agreements that we have through the domestication of the world. And when you read the beginning of the book, he'll go over that part, which in and of itself is deep, about how we've been domesticated and what hasn't been normal for me. And when kids rebel, it ain't because they rebel, it's because whatever you're sharing with them is not true about them and what they're able to do or see or be able to speak. And it's all of an impression. It talks about punishment, you know, when we're sharing and when we're going against ourselves. It's a punishment, and we have to understand what agreements. I realize that I have a lot of limiting beliefs come from way back in agreements that we've made and what we've told ourselves and what we've been told that we took as a truth that really isn't a truth. They're lies. And so the impeccability and it says, once you have this agreement and you realize how important this agreement is, it's a beginning to helping you undo some of these agreements that you've had to a certain point in life, depending on where you are in your life, what age you are, this and that, and what you've received from a younger point. And so you have to begin to tell yourself the words that are empowering, the words that are the essence of you, the words that say, I'm a beautiful person. Go in this mirror, I'm this beautiful person. Yes, I can do this. Maybe I need help with it, but it's not that I can't do it. It's that I can. So when I say I can, that is a affirmation of impeccability to tell me what I'm capable of doing without assuming that I can't. When you were talking about the new stuff, I have an aunt that never drove, the one I was as close to that just passed, that never drove. And there's some people that probably should not be behind the wheel, even to this day. So,
maybe they just need
what
some
we
additional training and such.
Well, that's true.
Being impeccable with my word right now.
What we say to our children is important. And they receive this because we're the initial people who have the influence on them. So it's hard to be impeccable with them if you're not impeccable with your word to yourself.
Very true. Very, very true.
That's something to keep in mind. What are you saying to your children? I've had people to adulthood who said that I cannot imagine telling a child that they're stupid or that they're dumb. So that's something that's within you, an agreement that you made with yourself, that you have to take yourself and take your words to undo those agreements that were probably passed on to you and passed on to you. In the movie The Shack is a perfect example of how that was passed down and what was done and how it transforms into our life and what has been said to us, or even any actions with words that have been said to us that impact us. And so one of my things is, how often do you pause or consider the impact, here our audience here, with words before you're speaking? Do you take the time to consider what it is you're saying before you say it? Now, I know I've had some agreements and something that went on with some relative that just hit me, and we talked about triggers, but also try my best to articulate what is bothering me and what I'm asking you to honor. And if you can't honor that with the words that I'm trying to be impeccable with you with, and even to myself, then that's when you have to make a move. You have to
refer to the don't take anything personal agreement.
Yes.
And do your best.
Yeah. Yes. They,
don't
as
make
he
assumptions.
Said,
yeah.
They interact.
Yeah.
They follow. Everything follows being impeccable with your word. And this is one of the key ones. If you get into the book, you should have aha moments. I have this whole book almost outlined in different colors. And I mean, it's so deep. So deep. And like I said, that experience that I had, and the first thing that came out of the guy's mouth was, he said, words are powerful. They're that powerful.
They really, really are. So I think, 10 minutes left. How can you practice, right? We always talk about journaling and what have you. And I thought I would read I'm gonna be very vulnerable in this sharing here. So
Word.
I found so this is my journal from Spiritual Warrior Training. We had to journal in the morning and we had to journal at night, and there were certain questions and what have you. And so this is my evening time journaling entry. And for this particular day, the agreement that I was focusing on was be impeccable with your word.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to share this, and I think it'll highlight the power of being in practice and holding yourself accountable for your actions, and having a journaling practice really does help support you with seeing how you show up in your life. So I'll share the passage here.
Wonderful.
So it says, today in meeting with my feminine power partners, I found myself wanting to just scream and express my opinion, but reminded myself to honor my commitment to the group, to hold space for sharing and expressing. I found that I was reminded of the impact and my need to be spiritually grounded through seeking the lesson in her share. The need for courage, commitment, and being faith-filled, and to also find the joy in knowing things will work out in my favor, and the need to let go of the need to control the path to actualization, to go with the flow and directional shifts that are likely to occur and not allow them to waver my faith. I did honor my agreement today by not saying I did something that I did not do, realizing my word is what I have that speaks to my integrity of heart and mind. I also held my tongue with the realization of the demonstration of what it looks like to not let go of the need for control, to not be bold in seeking divine support and intervention, and to have faith in the divine coming and showing up and helping me be purposeful in my life. I led with compassion, and I prayed for her and her demonstration to myself, asking she receive the clarity that she is seeking to find. I uplifted her through prayer as well, and asking that their intentions become actualized for them both. And I thank them for being vulnerable over the past month. I have faith they will get there on their own journey, path, and timing. So I kind of remember the situation a little bit, but one of the things about journaling is that you'll get really comfortable at being honest. And one of the gifts of spiritual warrior training is that it really pushes you to own your dysfunction.
Yeah.
And be aware of how you're functioning, from the understanding of the power of having the awareness of self, and innately knowing that you can shift and change, and how can you get to a place of finding that peace of mind and within yourself and your life. So ask yourself, pick an agreement, work with this agreement, and start the day, set the intention. That in itself is being impeccable with your word. I am choosing to work with this agreement of being impeccable with my word. Checking in with yourself in the evening time or throughout the day, and really writing and asking yourself, how was I impeccable with my word? How did other people, how did their words influence me? Just catching yourself. That's how you really start to kind of shift and have an awareness and that mindfulness of the power of your word. That's where you start to kind of make the changes, and you start to become empowered with your life versus like running away from it. So I just wanted to kind of share that excerpt. And
that was beautiful. That was really, really, really beautiful.
Because life
to have that reflection and retrospective of it, because you're right, in training was very aware when we went outside how we were being. This is about how are you being in the world
every single day.
And it begins with you. So the biggest thing is this here means it begins with you. So one of the things I outline, it says, tell yourself how wonderful you are. So it begins with going in the mirror. And it's not something that we're used to do. I'm not, well, there's some people that can be in the mirror, but it's purposeful work to be in the mirror and tell yourself how beautiful you are, how loving you are, how gifted you are. And to believe it, the thing is that we have to believe it. I don't know when we do that, we believe it. And I say this through experience. Now, there's some things that I believe about me, and then there's other things that you don't, but everything that, essence, we ought to know is great. And then we project that out into the world. And we can see that in people. I guess the one big thing that people notice is I do see good in people. People have had issues with homeless people. Not all people have been homeless. One of the movies I like is with Tyler is something about the family that prays. And the main character, you know, she just spilling out all kind of stuff about the guy who came to her mother's restaurant, who had all this information
That's a
that
really good
she was
movie.
feeding from while she was helping him. And she said all these words, and we know all the stuff that was going on with her. And she was not impeccable with her word.
That
And
entire
so,
movie is a
yes,
lesson on impeccability with your
yes,
word. That entire
yes.
movie. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
movie
so
is
that movie came up. Ooh,
crazy.
that's just spirit working.
That movie is crazy. But don't when you
Yes, I've
say
watched it
like
more than once.
when
Yeah,
you said that movie, I was like, oh my
twice.
God, that's a movie right there that will show you the power of your words and
Mm-hmm.
how you're casting certain things. All the characters are doing
Mm-hmm.
it in some capacity. Mm.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I see goodness in everybody. So I've spoke with homeless, and I don't treat them any old kind of way. Even when somebody committed an offense, there's something that's going on within them that is unhealed. It's just that case. After having a conversation with a retired police officer here, and considering, you know, the background that I possess and how I walked it, you know, I couldn't walk it any differently. I couldn't be other than that. It was not comfortable for me. So, and he found out that when you run into somebody, that somebody was hurting and that he had done something. I don't think it was anything real bad, but he came in contact with a gentleman and he was still suffering from his mother's passing. And he thought that the guy's mother had passed recently, but it had been 4 years. And he got an aha moment, and that aha moment is that people are going through things. And when I thought maybe the justice system would help, it needs to help because people are not bad people. People do what we consider to be bad things, but people are not bad people. And you have to watch how you say and how you approach people, and what you say to them can shift their day. Can shift their day. Give them aha moments to make them think and go and be better, do better. So that's how powerful our words are to ourselves and to one another, but it begins with us. We are the ones that have to go and go into the mirror and tell ourselves these things. Secondary, we need to believe them about ourselves and see ourselves in others, see the goodness in others. See the goodness of the others, then you can speak goodness out. Because that's the goodness of you.
It's a good reminder. That's a really good reminder. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up here. Um,
So
um,
let's pose a question. Just say, we'll go with this. In what ways can you practice being more mindful and intentional with your language as you go forward? That's our audience. How can you be able to, how can you do that? So with some of the things we have shared, and it begins with you. So pose that question to you.
all right. Well, thanks for being in conversation. That's it for this episode.
Always a pleasure.
So we are going to be going over the other four agreements for sure. So we're the other three. So look out for those.
Possible fifth agreement will come down the line later.
Maybe. We'll see. But definitely, we're going to discuss the 4 agreements. So look out for those. So be sure you subscribe to the channel so you can receive notifications of those videos.
Subscribe.
And give this video a thumbs up, letting us know if you liked the content, and
please do
leave a comment down below responding to her question. So say goodbye. We're going bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Peace.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Much love. Yes, thank you.